As always, Doug Branson brings new mock drafts. We'll discuss some of the picks in those. Plus, Cody Martin speaks with Rod Boone of the Charlotte Observer. We discuss all of that today on Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Basketball GM. If you've ever dreamed of becoming an NBA GM and managing your basketball franchise, this game is definitely for you. Download the game. All you have to do is just visit ultimatebasketballgm.com or look it up on the app stores. Our listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On, all caps in the game. So we appreciate Ultimate Basketball GM for sponsoring today's episode. That feels like your ad more so than any, where you can just be the GM of your own franchise, and then you can go through all these mock drafts, make an educated guess on who you're going to take for the Charlotte Hornets or fava beans with a nice Chianti, whatever you're going to name your team in that game.
Well, I don't know if it would be educated. It would definitely, there would be some guessing. I go from the gut, baby, not from the brain. Well, I take other people's research.
That's correct. Yes, that's what mock drafts are, and that's exactly what we're going to do. You can check out Doug Branson's work on his substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. You can catch me on the radio, WFNZ, Sports Radio 92.7 FM. Let's get to the mock drafts, baby. That's why you're here. It's why Doug is here, essentially, the last 9 games of the regular season now, going all the way up to the NBA draft. I heard you going over them a little bit. You did not tell me who the prospects were, but you were surprised. There is a surprise that we're going to discuss in one of these things. So let's start off with the first one you got for us.
Well, everyone is updating their mock drafts now that the tournament has kicked off, is in full force. Sweet 16 coming up. So everybody's scrambling to update their projections based on what's going on in the tournament. I don't know how smart that is necessarily. I think we probably overweight tournament performance when it comes to these things. At least at the top of the draft, things have stayed relatively the same. It really is the bottom of the draft that it's getting interesting. And the Hornets, of course, going to or projected to draft at the top and the bottom because they have that pick from the Nuggets coming back. So I'll start with Tankathon, one of our favorite websites here. And I thought, let's go ahead and I just want to go ahead and sim this lottery real quick to see if we get lucky. Beep, boop, 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 boop. Nope, the Hornets stay at 4 in my latest sim there.
That was a blur. That was a blur. We didn't even get, if you would have had the number 1 overall pick, I wouldn't have known how to celebrate. Anyways, that was a blur. Okay, thank you. We got number 4.
Hey, we're keeping it quick here. We got a lot of mock drafts to get to. We're going to just keep it rolling along. Here we go on a Wednesday. So Tankathon at number 4 overall, the Hornets select shooting guard, point guard prospect out of Overtime Elite, Amen Thompson. Yeah, 6'7", 202, 20 years old, averaged 20 points per 36 in Overtime Elite. Amen Thompson going 4. And then at 28, at 27, they've got this at 27. The Hornets are taking Dariq Whitehead, the small forward out of Duke, 6'6", 190 pounds, the freshman at 18.6 years old. What do you think about that?
Okay, well, Dariq Whitehead is interesting just starting there first because he came on as the season went on. That was a freshman that was highly touted, but was not there for the Duke Blue Devils really at the beginning. He battled some injuries as well, but had one monster game. I believe it was against Miami. It was a huge one in the ACC tournament where the Blue Devils would eventually win the ACC tournament, and he was a big part of that in that Miami game. And so you put him more so on the wing, 6'6", and that's exactly what Amen Thompson is, 6'7", put him on the wing. And he's that prototype, right? Like that's kind of what I've been looking for in the draft for quite some time. And it's the one archetype that's eluded the Charlotte Hornets for a while. You go to Miles Bridges, that's probably the last player you can put into this potential archetype. But even then, we were discussing him as a power forward. PJ Washington, more so a power forward. LaMelo Ball, a point guard. Then you get to James Bouknight in the backcourt. Kai Jones, more front court. And now here we are with Mark Williams as a center. I mean, Doug, they have not gotten a guy out there on the wing. And I think that archetype player is the type of guy you think of as the elite players in the game. Those are the ones that are the most coveted. And so at least you give yourself a shot with somebody like an Amen who is a 6'7", and, we'll see what kind, like backcourt, maybe front court type player as far as the 2-3 goes. What do you think about Amen?
I think Amen is extremely athletic. I mean, I think that's all the upside because, he hasn't really shown an ability, and neither is his twin brother, Asar, an ability to shoot very consistently. So you're really betting on how high he can jump, how fast he can run, and, how slick he is getting to the rim. And that's what Amen can do. He can power his way to the rim and yam it down. He's going to be a great player in transition. I think that's why he would project so well, next to LaMelo Ball, because I think those two would really work off of each other particularly well. But he can be on ball a lot. And I think that's going to be important on whatever prospect they bring in to, again, long-term go alongside LaMelo Ball. I think you want somebody that can take some of those backup point guard duties. I mean, I think it's one of the biggest needs that they have in this draft and in this offseason overall is to find more playmaking. And while I think Asar projects as the better playmaker of the two, Amen, I think can certainly help other people be better as well. Amen would be good. Dariq Whitehead is interesting. I wonder how much of that is the Duke connection that there's sort of these ACC prospects, especially in these early mock drafts, tend to gravitate towards the Charlotte Hornets franchise. And so I wonder how much that is versus where he's actually projected to go. The big minus from him on this Ringer draft, mock draft that I'm about to get to, Kevin O'Connor writes, struggles when shooting from a standstill. He has stiff mechanics. It looks like he's launching a medicine ball.
It's like the Draymond Green, right? With the backpack on, it seems like there's a lot of effort to get the basketball up towards the goal. So that's a little concerning. Yeah, and the shooting, that might be a problem for either one of these guys. But at least you have, to me, to have somebody that can kind of play on the wing. And I know, look, I haven't seen a lot of Overtime Elite. I just want to make that out there, put that out there outside of what you see from Scoot Henderson when you type in highlights and just film of potentially the number 2 overall pick. But with Amen, that is someone that also at least provides the length and the height for you if you put him in the backcourt and then maybe experiment with him going all the way to 3. He's small. He's only 200 pounds. And I know it, as Kevin O'Connor writes, right, like Beanpole Zion Williamson is a comparison. So trying to encapsulate the athleticism in a body that is the exact opposite of what Zion Williamson is. So did you have another mock draft for us today?
Well, yeah, I've got a couple actually. So we'll get to these real quick because the mock draft from Kevin O'Connor is similar. It's Amen Thompson at 4, it's Dariq Whitehead at the bottom of the draft. And the top 3, by the way, are the same for both of these mock drafts as well. Victor Wembanyama, Scoot Henderson, still not moving off of that 2 slot. There's the chatter is starting to happen with Brandon Miller. I think if he has a hot Final Four, that chatter will only grow. But right now, Brandon Miller still slotted at 3. And that really seems to be solidifying. There seemed to be Brandon Miller at 4, and now he's risen to 3. There's some similarities happening across these mock drafts. So that's what's happening at the Ringer. And then I've got one from Bleacher Report. Now, here is a slight difference. We've got at 4, Amen Thompson going to the Hornets again. And then Jarris Walker going to the Magic at 5 right after that. So that's interesting. Jarris Walker, I think, starting to climb up draft boards a little bit as well. But if we scroll down here to the 28th pick via the Nuggets, the Charlotte Hornets are selecting Noah Clowney, the power forward from Alabama. So we'll get a chance to look at him. That team is still in the tournament. He's getting overshadowed a little bit by Brandon Miller. But what do you think about the power forward out of Alabama, Noah Clowney?
Yeah, don't know much about him right now because I've not dove in all of the research for some of the later picks in the first round. Right now, I'm focusing on some of the top 10 guys, a little bit more so in the tournament. But you're right, he has been overshadowed because Brandon Miller, that's what's funny, right? Like this team is number 1 overall. And even in a year where there's so much parity, we all kind of gravitated more towards Alabama. They did get the number 1 overall seed. As a team, they've looked the best out of all the number 1 seeds. Houston has struggled in both games and then separated in the second half. And then you go to Kansas, got dropped by Arkansas with NBA talent on the roster. We all know what happened with Purdue. Here's Alabama moving on to the first, moving on to the second, defensively locking up a pretty good Maryland team. So, yeah, I mean, as far as Clowney coming from a program that performed really well this year, that is something that entices me if you can't get Brandon Miller.
Yeah, let me give you some stats here real quick. So he's a 6'10" power forward. Wingspan, I think some early indications of the wingspan are 7'2". So my guy's got
Not
some
bad.
long arms. There's no question about the hustle. Hard-nosed rebounder, hard-nosed defender. He's only averaging 1 block per game, but I don't think that's really his particular role on that Bama team. But the pluses from the Ringer are positional versatility, hustle, on-ball defense, interior scoring, shades of Wendell Carter, who is really, by the way, Wendell Carter really coming into his own in the NBA right now, and then Naz Reid. So Ringer has him at 18. So I think there's a little bit of trying to figure out where he's going to settle into the draft. But I think if Noah Clowney falls to you, and hey, maybe you could even pair him with Brandon Miller. Wouldn't that be something? A couple of Bama guys heading to Charlotte. That would be interesting. So I've got one more mock draft, but I know we got to get to a break. And this is, I'll tell you, do a little tease here. This is one of the more interesting mock drafts I've seen so far in my draft scouting. I mean, this one's explosive. I'll tell you that.
Oh, okay, that's a hell of a tease. No need to go any further on that. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Explosive mock draft coming up. Okay, yeah, explosive mock draft, explosive sound bites, interrupting me. Very, very good. This episode is brought to you by Ultimate Pro Basketball GM. If you've ever dreamed of becoming an NBA GM and managing your basketball franchise, your first one, your second one, virtual reality, whatever, your dream can come true. And this game is absolutely for you. You can manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the season, and lead your team to glory. And you're responsible for everything from hiring the right coaches, the right assistants, trading and training players, making those draft picks, and then navigating your franchise through free agency and the draft, all the ups and downs that come with it. Locked On Hornets listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using promo code Locked On in the game store as well. So make sure to check it out. To download the game, just visit probasketballgm.com, scan the code, or look it up on the app stores. That's probasketballgm.com. Ultimate Basketball GM. Start your dynasty today. Explosive mock draft coming up next. Locked On Hornets.
This is Locked On Hornets.
I'm a fantastic Googler. I'm bad at logging in. If they were to do sort of a scouting report of me and my ability to use the internet.
Todd.
Yeah,
Excellent Googler, not a very good guy that's logging in. Very good at interrupting the host anytime he's trying to go on a rant.
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
All right, Doug, you teased us. What do you got for us, man? 2 mock drafts that we've already talked about. Noah Clowney, somebody a little different from Alabama. I haven't talked a ton about the Thompson twins. Maybe we focus on them a little bit more in this next segment. But what does this mock draft have for us?
Before I get to that mock draft, I was just looking at Noah Clowney's performance in the tournament so far. So first game, he scored 10 points, only took 4 shots in 9 minutes. That's interesting. I wonder if there was a injury situation. I mean, they got up big pretty early. But then second game, 31 minutes for Noah Clowney, okay? This is a blowout victory against Maryland. And 1 of 5 from the field, only 5 points. He did get 9 rebounds, got an assist, got a steal. Only 2 personal fouls. 0 of 3 from 3, which, by the way, Clowney can definitely shoot the 3. But that's interesting. Another player. How did Maryland win this game? So
or Alabama.
Well,
yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah. How did Alabama win this game against Maryland? When both, well, I think Clowney had this poor performance in terms of points scored and shooting from the field. And Brandon Miller scored 19 points, but was extremely inefficient. Man, I guess everybody else had it going because
defensively, Alabama they're very good. They were not one of the best defensive teams as far as like top 5 or anything like that. They were more so that on offense, but still one of the few teams in college basketball, if you look at Ken Pom and the advanced stats, had them still very good offensively and defensively, and that's how they were able to beat Maryland.
Are you ready for this mock draft?
So ready, especially after the tease. Absolutely.
This is Jonathan Givony, ESPN, if you don't know. Jonathan Givony's 2024 NBA mock draft. Yeah. We're talking.
So it's not explosive. It's just the wrong year.
No, it's the right year, baby. He's got the Charlotte. Now they project out the draft order, and Jonathan Givony does not have much faith in the Charlotte Hornets to turn this thing around in 1 year. He's got the Hornets projected as the second worst team in the NBA, only in front of the San Antonio Spurs. So they're picking 2 overall, and they're selecting Cody Williams from Colorado. Well, not really from Colorado. He hasn't played there yet. He hasn't played a single minute of college basketball because, of course, all these top prospects now are freshmen or from G League Ignite or whatever. So, yeah, 18.2 years old. I don't know if that's how old he is right now or how old he will be when he's drafted. But Cody Williams, the guard prospect out of Colorado. What do you think about Cody Williams? What do you know about Cody Williams?
No, I'll let you go first on this one, Doug. Please, after you. I will. I'll let you give all the analysis on Cody Williams in 2024.
Well, I'll just say it's interesting. Yeah, Colorado. I mean, getting the big-time prospect, the big-time small forward prospect. 6'8", 175 pounds, 5-star recruit, going to Colorado. Scout grade 93 on ESPN. Okay. He's 6th overall on ESPN's 100 prospects. So there you go, Cody Williams. Now, Cody Williams will be a big name by the time we get around to talking about this next year. But the big name from the 2024 NBA mock draft, right?
Well, I know one, and if the Hornets were to slip a little bit in this mock draft, maybe he would be the guy to go there. That is one son of LeBron James, Mr. Bronny James.
That's correct. Uncommitted so far. Still don't know where he's going to college. It looks like it's going to be somewhere out west. USC seems to be the leader in the clubhouse. But Bronny James, we still don't know where he's going to college, but we know that he will end up in the NBA, and we think we know that maybe whatever team he ends up with could also feature LeBron James, who is definitely keeping his options open. And right now, this mock draft has Bronny James going 10th overall. I mean, well done by Pops, man. He is just really, I'm sure Bronny James is going to be a great player. I'm not sure about that, but I mean, at least he's got a good shot at it, right? But I think all of this talk can only help his draft prospects at this point. And 10th overall to the Orlando Magic. But if the Hornets slip, you're right.
So it's going to be weird to see teams potentially wanting to trade back. Is this the year where number 7 is actually more valuable than number 1 because number 7-8 might get you the real value with Bronny and then also LeBron James? And so that would be hilarious. At what point in 2024 would you consider trading back to try to get Bronny James and then also acquire LeBron James? So that's a conversation for a year from now.
There's going to be so much smoke. I mean, it's going to be
crazy.
Look, there's going to be talk of Bronny James going 3 overall. There's going to be talk of Bronny James going 15th. He is just going to mess up all of the draft projections. It's going to be exciting.
Depending on the aging process of LeBron, which it could happen at any moment, but it hasn't really yet. We see him aging a little, but he's still an all-NBA worthy player. So as long as that's the case, people will be throwing out the idea. NBA Today will be throwing out the idea, should Bronny James be the number 1 overall pick, for you to also select LeBron James or acquire LeBron James. So maybe, again, that's a conversation we'll be diving into a little bit more a year from now. But how about right now? We'll ask the same question, Doug. At what point are you really considering trading back or trading the player, the selection that you have for a veteran at this point in the NBA draft? What time are you really starting to think about that?
Well, we know this Hornets organization, the front office led by Mitch Kupchak, they are not afraid to trade back in the first round. They did it last draft, much to our dismay, trading the opportunity to select Jalen Duren.
They did it the first draft they were a part of. Mitch Kupchak, the infamous temper tantrum in Spectrum Center when they traded SGA away. Yes.
Well, that was your temper. Yeah. Last year was my temper tantrum. That year was your temper tantrum.
Well, last year we just all sulked. Last year we did a podcast together in a dark room and had a really sad podcast. And so, but yes, you're right.
Well, but I think it's pertinent because the justification for doing that in part was they didn't want to pay a bunch of prospects when they had a ton of prospects that they wanted to take a look at. They had James Bouknight, they had Kai Jones, they had Then they added Bryce McGowan's, they added Mark Williams. And so there was a bit of a backlog, and they didn't want to add to that backlog. And I don't know what's changed. I mean, they're committed to James Bouknight contractually. They're still looking at Kai Jones. Now they've committed to Bryce McGowan's. And so the backlog hasn't gotten any less loggy. I think, if they do drop into the 5, 6, 7, because look, at 1, I'm hanging up the phone. You're not talking to me at 1. At the second pick, I'm still hanging up the phone. The third pick, I'm letting the phone ring a couple of times, but then I'm sending it to voicemail. At 4, okay. I mean, if the package were big enough, because I think it shows the depth of this draft that at 4, I think you can still really, like Amen or Asar, these are star level players that would probably be a 1 or 2 pick in weaker drafts. So I think you do start to have those conversations at 4. But if they drop down to 5 or 6, I think you definitely have to entertain one of 2 things. One, bring in a veteran who can actually help you make the playoffs next season, because they want to compete. LaMelo wants to compete for to get into the playoffs for once. So the urgency is there. You bring in a veteran, or I'm not even messing around. Like, if you get an opportunity to get an extra pick from a Magic team or a Blazers team or a Pelicans team or a Pacers team, some of these people that are always hanging around the late lottery, why not acquire one for next season, an extra pick, and have another shot at Bronny James? I'm not even kidding.
So yes, it would be for Bronny, because that draft also is considered an extremely weak one, right?
Poopy.
Sometimes that doesn't come true. Like, I always feel weird about talking about how strong a draft class is. It does look like this draft class, though, really is strong, right? Like, we'd kind of known about this particular one coming up for a long time. And so it seems to be holding true. Wemby is awesome. Scoot's awesome. Now you even have somebody like Brandon Miller shooting up draft boards. I wonder where we would be talking about the Thompson twins, Keontae, Jarris Walker, Nick Smith, Anthony Black. I mean, that's the crazy part, right? It's deep, because Nick Smith was once upon a time the 3rd overall selection. Cam Whitmore, same thing, but injuries just kind of settled in. So this is a deep draft, even if it's tough to try to measure it all within this class itself. So where does Cam Whitmore project compared to next year's draft class? And this is exactly what Richard Stein talked about last year with us. He was the only one, Doug, that actually liked the move Mitch Kupchak made. I mean, just outright liked it. When we all were sulking, he liked it because you got an extra pick in this draft class, and he had been touting this one as one of the best we've seen in quite some time. And so to have multiple in this class, maybe he didn't expect the Denver Nuggets to be as good as they were. So I'd like to see a little high. Well, yes, as an NBA contender, we knew about the Denver Nuggets being good. You quite literally traded this pick last year for a worse one. That was always going to happen.
Well, it was top 16 protected. It wasn't going to get there was no way. I think people need to understand this. When they traded that pick, there was literally no way for that pick to become better than the pick that they traded.
Yes, but, right, just speaking from his standpoint, no, I'm with you. But what he was saying was that at least you get something possibly at 22, whatever he thought, I don't know. And then 22 this year is actually better than 13 last year and could be better than 13 next year. And so that was the thinking. But you're right. Like that was what we were discussing. And so this is a draft class for me where even if you miss out on the top 2-3 guys, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt a lot. But the reality is you could still be getting a very, very good player, more so than in other draft classes.
And I hear that. I think that the argument to actually make a pick in this particular draft is strong. And so maybe if there were an opportunity to move back, I don't think you can give up a lottery pick entirely for whatever package, unless it was just, immense. The player that you got in return, if it were a player that was souring on his organization and was like an all-star, all-NBA level player, and there was some way to kind of maneuver that player into Charlotte, because, we know that it's going to be difficult to acquire that level of talent, veteran talent in the NBA, without some kind of leverage on the Hornets' part, and the Hornets having a top pick would be extreme leverage. Or at least a 4 through a 7 pick in a strong draft would be some strong leverage for the Hornets. So, But at the same time, I understand the argument that, hey, this is a strong draft. You're building for the future. Why not take a shot here? And then if you end up at the bottom of the league next season, then you can entertain moving the pick. So I get it. And I think the other interesting piece of this is that you're talking about a front office that is possible that will make this pick. There's possibly a lame duck front office, because if Michael Jordan sells the team, I think you and I both expect the front office to be pretty much reevaluated top to bottom. And then, so you've got a situation where a front office is going to bring in a player, but there will be a new front office that would have to manage that player's career into the future, which I don't think would be a problem if you got somebody with the talent level of a Victor Wembanyama or a Scoot Henderson or a Brandon Miller. But I think could be a difference marginally if we're talking about a 4, 5, or 6 pick.
Yeah, and let's continue that conversation. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
We can hit on that a little bit more, the fact that this could be a lame duck pick, but also Cody Martin spoke with Rod Boone. Every once in a while, we'll talk about Cody Martin. Every once in a while, he'll play, but it has not been a good season for a guy that just signed an $8 million a year contract. We'll get to that conversation in just a moment. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The tournament is heating up, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because new customers right now get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet does not win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, it's secure, it's super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your first bet for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. One more segment to go. Locked On Hornets.
This is Locked On Hornets.
To start this off, we all know about LeBron and how he built a school and it got a lot of fanfare. By the time 2019 closes, Bismack Biyombo is planning to have 6 schools.
Take that, LeBron.
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
I was thinking about Mitch Kupchak. If he's gone, we can do the whole what was his tenure like episode maybe at some point later on. But, that could be on the horizon here, Doug, especially if this franchise exchanges hands quickly. But as we discussed, kind of the lame duck pick, and lame duck in the sense that it might not, the player might not be here long term. If the owner comes in and then Gabe Plotkin and Rich Snob, they hire somebody else differently, like whatever GM that they are going to go after. And then that GM doesn't like the player. Maybe he gets traded or whatever. Now, the way to beat that is for Mitch Kupchak to just make an outright good selection, right? Like if you make your Jalen Williams pick or your Ben Mathurin pick, just trying to think of guys that weren't top 2 that did pan out immediately this season, then, okay, any GM is going to come in and recognize that as a foundational player. All right, we're not going to move that for anything less than an amazing, Godfather offer, or something like that. So that's the way to beat it. And so I wonder just with this pick, each one gets more important for Mitch Kupchak. For the future of the franchise, maybe it doesn't get more important for Mitch Kupchak because he might be on the way out. But for the franchise, for this specific player, I wonder how important it is on the hierarchy of all the selections that Mitch Kupchak has made.
And, a last chance for him to make not a last chance, but one of the last chances. We're talking like it's guaranteed here. None of this is guaranteed. But it could be one of the last chances for Mitch Kupchak to make his mark, not only on the Charlotte Hornets, but the NBA as a general manager. So I think there is a lot of pressure on this pick in particular and what they do in this draft. I just hope they don't get too cute. I felt like last season they got too cute with the first round. Just make your picks. I think there were some interesting prospects around where they were picking. Even, I know I was heavily biased towards Jalen Duren, but there were a couple of prospects around that 11 pick that they could have made that I thought could have made a difference long term. But instead, we're talking about they gave us the opportunity to talk about Dariq Whitehead and City Cisco and all these folks. I would encourage you, I don't want to go back to the 2024 mock draft again, but I did do some cursory examination of who they're projecting at the number 1 pick. You heard of this guy? I'm going to butcher the name. Matas Buzelis.
No, not heard of him.
You never heard of this guy? Go look at some videos, man. I mean, kid can ball. Right now projected as a guard prospect going to the G League Ignite, is eschewing college. So once again, that top pick, or at least one of the top 2 picks, same as Scoot Henderson, not got a ton of offers from a lot of the AAA schools, not going to college, going to the G League Ignite. But he's got some fun mixtapes out there, man. You should check it out.
My brain can only take so much with the NFL mock drafts that I'm also examining into like the 3rd and 4th rounds, and then also this mock drafts or these mock drafts with the NBA, and then going into next year, you're trying to put 2024 Matas, whatever the last name is that I don't know. I mean, like, check him out. If he's in play for the number 1 overall selection for the Panthers to be the quarterback, then I'll definitely check him out. Or possibly with Charlotte Hornets too in 2023. Let's get to Cody Martin conversation, Doug, because he spoke with Rod Boone of the Charlotte Observer, and really all the conversation basically surrounding is how frustrated he is, right? He said, quote, "Yeah, it's frustrating. Feels like you're just watching it on TV and are kind of just there. And the only thing I can really do is provide my support verbally and emotionally, whatever the team needs, and just kind of be in that leadership role and say what I need to say. I'm still going to be there as their teammate and support them and say things that I feel like I would need to say even if I was playing." So just kind of a sad situation with Cody Martin, what happened this year. We all thought it was a pretty fair deal, right? Just 3 years, $8 million a season, gets hurt a minute and a half, maybe not even that long, into the first game that he plays, and just can't give it a go really the rest of the way. I think he came back for like 3 contests. I think that's right. It wasn't much when he did come back. Doug, what do you make of Cody Martin's lost season and just how that might affect next year?
Well, it's just one more player that is sort of sitting in this mystery zone of, what could have been this season. And I think it's a big part of why this organization really views this season as a lost season, in the sense that, like, we're really not even going to pay attention to how bad this season got. And I think that they're going to have some leniency on particular player performances over the course of this season, knowing that they were missing so many pieces. And it really feels like that the franchise feels like, okay, we can go into next season with the idea that we actually did the right thing last offseason by doing nothing, by signing Cody. And if we had been able to retain Miles Bridges, this season would have gone a lot differently. So we're going to just steady as she goes, keep it going. The Mark Williams thing seems to be working out in our favor. So now we just push on ahead. And I think, Cody not having played is just going to give them a sense that, hey, next season, all those injuries that we sustained, well, we're going to have a lot more depth because, Bryce McGowan's has started to get a lot more time. They probably view it as a positive because you've gotten some of these wing players into the rotation that maybe you would not have had a chance to see had Cody Martin played.
Yeah, I wonder how much that affects Bryce McGowan's next year if Cody Martin's fully healthy. So if you talk about having LaMelo Ball in the backcourt, you bring back Cody Martin, and you bring back Dennis Smith Jr., right? So that would be something pretty interesting, too. With all the backcourt players, let's not even forget if Kelly Oubre does get the contract, just how much that might eat into Bryce McGowan's, because Kelly can play some two at times. I wonder if you have one of these JT Thor setbacks where you see some stuff you like, and then the second season happens and you do not get that escalator growth that you want from all the players, even if we're always there to point out players don't get better on an escalator. Sometimes it is a weird little scatter plot to see them get to the top. But with Bryce McGowan,
well, it's hard to play basketball on an escalator. I mean, dribbling difficult. Not a lot of space to dribble. Yeah, I mean, where do you even put the hoop on an escalator? Like, how does that even work? Do you have to wait? You have to get back on the escalator? Does it sit at the top and you have to wait to get back on the escalator to actually get close enough to the rim? I mean, if you got long arms, if you got a long wingspan, then yeah, I think playing on an escalator might be a little bit easier, but tough for everyone else.
The game is really short because as soon as you basically just put it at the top, and then as soon as he gets to the bottom, the game is over. So it's like a 5-second game.
In all seriousness, on the Cody Martin front, there's a big question. And the question is, do you get the same Cody Martin as you expected to get this season when you signed him to the contract, do you get that same Cody Martin next season? Because this is something missing this much time is something that Cody Martin has not been accustomed to. And I think there will be some serious questions about how much he can trust his body moving forward, if he's going to be the same player or if he plays a little bit more carefully or if he's worried about the injury. Because you have to remember that the reason they signed Cody Martin to this contract is because he played so well the previous season. He became a much better shooter. He was He was a reliable wing defender for them. He was coming into this season with a lot of momentum. And all of that momentum has suddenly stopped. And so is he the same player, or does he get, I mean, ideally you would want him not even to be the same player, but get better. You signed him because you felt like he was on an upward trajectory. But is that all of a sudden going to be stunted by this injury?
Yeah, well, and even so, the last thing I'll say about it is the shooting. Cody Martin is a natural defender. We saw him. That was his strength in college. He was the defensive player of the year in the conference at Nevada. You see him here. That's what we talk about on the perimeter. He is a very good cutter, right? He can slash. He got better as a basketball player offensively, where I think he was scared his first year seeing time, and then he got a lot better in that regard. What he is not natural at is shooting the basketball. He finally got to a point where he improved quite a bit, 38% just last season from three. But if you are not a natural shooter and then you don't play at all, I don't even know how many shots he's able to get up this season going through rehab, especially in the way that you might shoot during a game. And since you are missing out on those types of reps, how much does that bring your shooting down? And just how much did the shooting contribute to the next contract that he got? So that's something that's concerning. Hopefully it comes back to him.
And if you're concerned as a Hornets fan, I'll just say this. There are a lot of great small forward prospects in the 2025 draft. I've got an NBA mock draft here from NBA Draft Room. I mean, Ian Jackson, number 2 overall, small forward out of North Carolina. Just one pick below him, Nasir Cunningham, small forward, overtime elite. 2025, going to be a big year for small forwards.
Yeah, 100%. A couple years from now, we'll be there to cover it all. Thanks for making us your first listen in 2023, 2024, and 2025. Make your second listen game to game NBA. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every contest from across the league with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NBA, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.